So after a whole year later, we are finally receiving a brand new 4-star resonator, and unlike some of the previous 4-star characters that released, Buling does have a much more unique kit and holds a lot of long-term value. So especially with being a 4-star resonator that every player will be able to acquire either from the current banners or later on, it should be worth taking a deep dive into seeing whether players should invest into Buling. So with that, I'll be breaking down her full kit, team synergies she could be utilized in, echo builds and weapons that you would want to use. Then I'll be wrapping it up with Buling's overall value and whether or not she is worth the investment. As always, if you are interested in more WutheringWaves content, would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Now diving into this with the fact, Buling is an Electro Rectifier resonator and is a support, given she is capable of healing, providing various damage bonuses, and even has an ability revolving around the Electro Flare mechanic. Now Buling will have a few core mechanics within her kit that are a bit reminiscent of abilities from other characters. The first will be the Trigram mechanic, which is related to her heavy attacks and is somewhat similar to Phrolova's Forte gauge. Buling can obtain two different Trigrams known as Trigram Mountain and Trigram Thunder, which are both accumulated either through basic attacks, mid-air attacks, or when casting the resonant skill. A total of 4 trigrams can be held, and if any new trigrams are obtained, the trigram in the first slot on the left will be removed for the new trigram, pretty much like Phrolova's Forte stacks. Now there's a few different heavy attacks that can be activated depending on the first 2 trigrams held. Since if you do have 2 trigram thunder stacks next to each other, activating the heavy attack will lead to healing allies by a certain amount per second over the next 8 seconds. If you consume 2 mountain trigrams, then Buling will also heal allies, but instead of over time, it will be a quick burst of healing. Additionally, if you mix and match the trigrams, you can either deal a small amount of electro damage that reduces vibration strength further than usual, or you would just deal a larger amount of electro damage alone. However, if you don't have at least 2 trigrams and then decide to activate the heavy attack, Buling actually does suffer by losing 20% of current HP and is immobilized for a short duration. So it's a pretty funny gimmick they've decided to add, and one that could only be implemented into a 4-star character. But of course, this could possibly mess up your rotations if you aren't careful. Now the second core mechanic would of course be related to the Forte circuit, and this time round is going to be a bit reminiscent of the Shorekeeper's abilities. The Forte gauge is split into 2 different sections known as Minor Yang and Minor Yin. Minor Yang can be obtained after casting heavy attacks that will consume 2 different trigrams, whereas Minor Yin can only be obtained after casting heavy attacks that consume the exact same trigram. When Buling obtains Minor Yin and Minor Yang, she will then enter the Yin and Yang balance state, which replaces a standard Resonance Liberation with Resonance Liberation Flashing Thunder Spell Harmony. Now activating the second liberation will deal electro damage and generate 5 Thunder Spell Array at the target area, which will lead to additional electro damage being dealt alongside electro flare being inflicted on all targets every 2 seconds for 24 seconds. As a reminder, electro flare is simply just damage over time, and the more stacks that are inflicted, Electro Rage will then stack and lead to even more damage being dealt. Now alongside that, and while the 5 Thunder Spell Array is active, all resonators in the team will enter the Thunder Spell Primordial Chi state, which doesn't really do anything until you do activate the intro skill to then unlock the next stage of the Primordial Chi state. So a bit similar to the Shorekeeper's Resonance Liberation, providing stronger buffs whenever you do activate the intro skill, the second stage in the Primordial Chi state will provide 10% resonant skill damage bonus to all resonators. Then the final stage will grant a 25% resonant skill damage bonus. So essentially, Buling is going to provide solid healing through various abilities, and especially when tied with the inherent skill that provides a 25% bonus for resonators with less than 50% HP, alongside providing a resonant skill damage bonus of 25% through the Forte, but also through the resonant skill she will be able to crowd control enemies to enable it to be much easier to cleave through them. Then the cherry on top is the outro that will be able to heal but also provides a 15% general damage amplification for 30 seconds. So Buling with her base kit and abilities is a solid 4-star with great utility, but she is definitely going to be much better and reliable as a support when you do invest into her sequence nodes. The first 4 sequence nodes will provide decent value, such as increasing crit rate over liberation, being able to activate the liberation more often, and just becoming much more reliable at healing healing her allies. The more notable sequence nodes will of course be at the very end, and with the 5th node in specific, it allows 6 stacks of Electro Flare to be inflicted instantly on all targets when the second liberation is activated. So of course that will lead to Electro Rage being triggered much sooner and overall for a lot more damage dealt over time. But then there is the last sequence node, which essentially raises the 25% resonant skill damage bonus provided to allies to 50%, which is going to be great for various resonant skill damage dealers, though it will come at the requirement of reaching S6. So with that said, I don't really expect many players to be reaching S6 on Buling's release, aside from those that are going in for either Phrolova or Cantarella, but at some point you will be able to, and would then have a great support that can significantly boost the damage of your resonant skill damage dealers. Now in terms of versatility and team compositions, considering the fact that she does heal through various abilities and provides a general 15% damage amplification through the outro skill, it means for those that don't have many options you can use Buling as a general support. However, it's pretty clear that she is going to specialize in supporting teams with DPS characters that deal a lot of resonant skill damage. So one of the compositions would be Carlotta alongside Jeji and Buling as the support, given Carlotta's main damage dealing abilities do deal damage considered as resonant skill damage. So with having Jeji amplify both resonant skill damage and glacio damage, then Buling being able to boost that resonant skill damage further will allow her to synergize pretty well. Additionally, the crowd controlling ability Buling has within her resonant skill could be great for Carlotta, since it will be easier for her liberation to then hit all targets if they are grouped together. Alternatively, you can swap out Carlotta for Jinchi, since she is also capable of dealing a ton of resonant skill damage. Jinchi's main ability being the enhanced resonant skill does have pretty good AoE, but again Buling's resonant skill can still be useful to just ensure that nuke of an attack does hit all enemies. Now aside from those two, the only two other resonators to consider would be Phrolova and Changli, as they both also deal a lot of resonant skill damage through their abilities. Both of these characters do of course have their own dedicated compositions, but perhaps if you are missing a member and do need a solid alternative to utilize, then Buling can be used as the support for the dedicated compositions and would be able to buff their damage. Lastly, it's worth mentioning Chisa and Buling do have some synergy revolving around negative statuses, but they aren't going to be that great together unless a dedicated Electro Flare DPS does release, which I assume will benefit from the stacks of Electro Flare Buling does inflict. So when that certain character does release, only then would you consider having Chisa and Buling together, despite being pretty similar as backline supports. In terms of weapons to utilize, considering once again Buling is a support and you'll want to get through her rotation as soon as possible, like some other supports that use a rectifier, the variation is most likely going to be one of, if not the best option, given it has a 51% energy regen main stats, and when using a resonant skill it will provide 16 concerto energy at max refinement, which is going to allow Buling to blitz through her rotation and provide those buffs extremely quick. So especially with this being a 4-star weapon, it's quite likely most players do have a copy at the very least and may perhaps have multiple at max refinement, so you should be good with just using the variation. But if you perhaps aren't able to use it on Buling since you are using it elsewhere, then the Cosmic Ripples would be another solid choice, mainly due to the fact Buling's healing does scale off attack, and so with the Cosmic Ripples providing a considerable attack percent main stat, it does allow her healing to be even more reliable. Lastly, Call of the Abyss is definitely going to be a great choice, since it also has a considerable energy regen main stats and does increase healing bonus after casting the liberation, which again will improve her reliability as a support. It goes without saying that if you want Buling to deal more damage, then you are able to use various premium weapons, but it would probably be best to avoid using those weapons over the variation, since Buling is going to be used more for her supportive capabilities rather than her damage output, which means the variation alongside any other weapon that improves her rotation time or healing will be the best choice to opt for. Finishing this up with the Echo build, and it's pretty clear the Rejuvenating Glow set is going to be the build to go with, given it increases healing bonus by 10% and increases the attack of allies by 15% for 30 seconds upon healing. So again, like other supports, this is going to be the Echo set you certainly want to utilize, especially since you aren't really going to be using her in any other position aside from the support role. With that said, if you are using her in a team with multiple damage dealers rather than a hypercarry composition, you could use the Moonlit Cloud account set to buff the character you would switch into after Buling. But that's what of course lead to the final resonator not receiving any buffs from the Echo set, which ultimately means the Rejuvenating Glow set is then going to be the best set to use. As for the stats to prioritize for these Echoes, the 4 cost is going to want healing bonus, the 3 cost are going to want attack percent, and the 1 cost are also going to want attack percent. As for the substats, you'll likely want energy regen the most, following with attack percent and flat attack. Then you could go with both crit rate and crit damage, or pretty much any other stat as a throwaway. Overall, Buling is going to be a solid 4-star and is quite a unique character, with the fact that she is the only resonator able to inflict Electro Flare. So with that, alongside the fact that she does provide a massive resonant skill damage bonus alongside a few other buffs, it means she will be a character you may want to consider investing into. However, that is if you do obtain most of, if not all of her sequence nodes, since you don't really have the 50% resonant skill damage bonus until you do reach S6. So pretty much for newer players and casuals that may need another support, and especially for clearing Tower of Adversity with there now being more floors, Buling is going to be a good investment that should help out quite a bit. On the other hand, for veterans that have pretty stacked accounts, unless you do really just want to play around with a new character, you should probably only consider investing into Buling if you do manage to reach S6 and if you have a resonant skill damage dealer that can take advantage of her buffs. Otherwise, currently she isn't going to provide that much value for your account. Perhaps in the future a character may release that can take advantage of the Electro Flare stack she inflicts, but that is going to be for the future and for the devs to decide. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe for more WutheringWaves content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also, drop a comment down below on your thoughts on Buling and whether or not you plan to build her. And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.